We can do it again.
Start all over.
Everyone's going to stomach too.
Yeah. All right. You all good?
You good?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Answer.
Great. Hey everyone, my name's Ben Jones. I'm a CMS major here at MIT. So I'm going to go over some of the basics of League of Legends, and more importantly, why you should pay attention to it. It's now the biggest eSports, actually most played video game in the world, and how it got to be this way over the past 4 years is rather interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and explain some of the very basics of the game for those of you who have never played. Actually, can I get hands for who has heard of League of Legends before? Everyone. Okay, keep them up if you know someone who plays. Okay. If you've ever played before yourself. Okay. Cool. So how much experience do you guys have? I don't know you. How much experience do you have?
We both started like 2 weeks ago.
You've played before, right?
Yeah. I played before like 2 years ago for like 3 days, but I was
Okay.
like, oh my god, I can't
Too
even.
much to handle? it is a lot. Okay. You?
I've played for probably about a year and a half.
Okay. So you know your way around the game. Well, I apologize. This is going to be redundant in a lot of ways. You've been playing for like a year, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, a little longer than a year now.
Okay. Cool. Well, League of Legends Clash of Fates was the original title for League of Legends when it was in development in like around 2008, and it went into full beta in 2009, and that's actually when I started playing. It was around that time when Defense of the Ancients was just coming off of its huge hit of popularity. And League of Legends is actually made in the model of Defense of the Ancients. Right? So it has a similar type of map layout, similar type of camera, and what the player does. But League of Legends was its own take on the genre. The genre is now called MOBA, or Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, and there's a lot more MOBA games out there, but at the time there was really only Dota and then League of Legends and one knockoff. It was basically attempted to be a Dota
And goes on Warcraft 3 mod?
Yes, Dota was a Warcraft 3 mod. Okay. It was a Warcraft 3 mod that just gained a lot of popularity, so much so that if you went onto the custom games at any time online, it would be literally the only game being played. In fact, it became more played than the Warcraft 3 game itself on the ladders, towards like 5 years after Warcraft 3 came out. Anyway, so why you should pay attention to League of Legends and Riot Games. This infographic was put out I think a year and a couple months. It was the first infographic that Riot Games, the producers of League of Legends, put out, basically trying to boast saying, hey, we have a really awesome game here, lots of people play it, and this is the success that we've had over the last 3 years. So the infographic big headline is 32.5 million players. That's not regular players, it was just, that's how many people have played the game. But it's still a lot of people. The game itself is actually follows the free-to-play model, so anyone can play it, and you can get full access to it. There's people who've played it for 3 years and never paid a cent, and there are competitive players. So, scrolling down a little bit, there's just some random stats on here. The thing that I wanted to get to was exactly this many hours played every day in the world. That's a lot. This was a year ago. League of Legends has absolutely boomed since then. This is the infographic that they released a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, I think. So total summoners doubled from 3.25 to 70, and they have a lot more interesting stats on here, such as, right, lifetime sales of Grand Theft Auto versus monthly active players of League of Legends. You can see why Riot Games is actually doing really, really well. This was, I think, the most interesting one to me. The fact that hours played every month of League of Legends is half that of cumulative Halo hours. That was intense. People are really, really into this game, and people play from around the world. I think this is, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough. The first game that I can think of, at least, that is actually global. Everyone around the world plays this game. And the World Championships were held recently for up to $1 million, I think it was $1 million. And it was, got a lot of attention in the esports realm. It made headlines across the world, actually, like the Taiwanese team won, actually. And the Taiwanese team, the Taiwanese newspapers were just filled with the headlines of this team won. So, like, esports are actually becoming just like football, baseball, except even better globalized, everyone speaking the same language, of the game. So.
I would argue football is a pretty global sport. I would argue that football is a pretty global sport.
I said football isn't like American football, which I don't think is very global. But
I mean,
I agree.
soccer.
I completely agree. You're definitely right. It is. Okay. Well, yeah. So you got me beat
You got
there.
told, son.
You got me beat. Why did I have to say football of all things? Okay. This is just the timeline of League of Legends that they have up on the website that shows you the different patches. Can you guys see, by the way, the TV? I feel as if I'm blocking it. You guys are good? Okay. Great.
We can see.
So one of the actually very important things about League of Legends, before I even start talking about the game, one of the things that makes League of Legends what it is that it is in fact a free-to-play game that's updated constantly. It's constantly changing. Riot Games puts a lot of time and energy into working on the design and the constantly updating the visuals of the game. And it's come a very, very long way in the 4 years. The playable characters called champions, they produce a new champion like every 2 to 3 weeks. And have been doing so since 2009. Alright, now we're going to get into the actual how to play the game, which I think a lot of people in this room said that they know how to play, so I might spend a little bit less time on this than I was planning on too. But if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. Just raise your hand. Want to practice? Anyone have any questions for me now? No? Okay, that's disappointing. So, this is Summoner's Rift. This is the map that most League of Legends games take part of. This is the map actually that was used. It looks very similar to the map in Dota. It's been around for a very long time now. So the the goal of League of Legends is focused on this right here, this little thing called the Nexus. It is the building that you must protect. The goal of the game is to destroy the opposing team's Nexus. That is the only thing that matters. Right? And you're like, oh, that's easy. I just run up to it, I hit it a bunch of times, and then the Nexus is destroyed, right? Yay, I win. Well, not quite. When the game starts, it's actually invulnerable. You can't attack it. Right? It becomes invulnerable when these two turrets that you see here, they're called turrets or towers. They deal a lot of damage, and they attack quite often. They're the defending structures. And they have health as well. Well, you can't hit the Nexus until these two turrets are destroyed. Well, at the start of the game, those two turrets are also invulnerable. This thing right here, called the inhibitor, I promise that's the last new word I'm bringing up for this chain, is there are 3 of them, in fact, one for each lane, and the inhibitor. When the inhibitor dies, that's when those towers stop being invulnerable. But guess what? The inhibitor, it's also invulnerable at the start of the game. And this trend continues until you get to, I'm going to zoom out, I'm going to draw this line on the screen here. So Nexus is invulnerable, these 2 towers invulnerable, inhibitor. This tower is what causes this to become vulnerable, right? And it goes down in this line. There's a turret right here as well. You can see in this line, right? This turret, finally, this tier 1 turret, that is actually vulnerable at the start of the game, but it also does something like 150 damage when you start the game, and your champion has a base health of something like 400, 450. So you're not really going to be tackling the towers on by yourself. And this is the key to League of Legends. It's an objective-based game. You play on teams of five members, right? So it's 5-on-5. Each person only controls one unit. It's called a champion. And with your team of 5 people, your goal is to get through all of these defenses as well as the opposing champions that are in your way, right? There's a lot of strategy involved to it, and the other important parts of the map are you see that there's 3 lines that you can make here that seem rather open. Those are the ones that the turrets are along. They're called lanes. There's top lane that goes around the top border of the map. Can you guys see this mouse, by the way, or should I actually point up here? You can see the mouse?
Yeah.
Great, okay. So this is referred to as top lane or top. This is the middle lane or mid, and this bottom lane right here or bottom. Easy, right? Rather straightforward. Everything in between those lanes, there's 2 sections. There's the top jungle and the bottom jungle. They're filled with creatures, neutral creatures that you can kill for golden experience as well as buffs. They're not in your vision. Actually, tell you what, I'm gonna stop for a little bit about the jungle and actually just talk about the vision, because that's another really important part of League of Legends. Is in League of Legends that you have a top-down view, so your view is not much unlike this. It's a little bit more zoomed in the camera angle. I'm sorry, not the camera, in the camera. So you can see probably like half of this on like your screen as a player. However, there's Fog of War. So is everyone familiar with what Fog of War is? Yes, great. Okay, cool. So yeah, there's Fog of War, and you have allied vision, which means that the Fog of War goes away if anyone on your team, including towers, right? Towers are a great source of vision, has sight over it. There's also these little green patches here. Those are bushes. Bushes are a special type of terrain in League of Legends. You cannot see into bushes unless you have allied vision inside the bush, but you can see outside of bushes if you're in them, right? So they're a way of cutting off sight lines, creating a lack of knowledge for the players, and it really is a driving factor of making action happen in League of Legends. If there was no Fog of War, you could never get anything done because there would be perfect knowledge. Anyways, so this jungle that I was talking about is actually a source for golden income, like I said, and that holds one of the major roles in League of Legends. Right? Like I said, there's 5 people on each team, and each one of those people will be selected, well, not selected, I guess they choose to be up on a particular role, right? So there's 3 major different types of roles. There's the tanky initiator, who has a lot of health, a lot of disables to stop the opposing team from moving or attacking or casting spells. There is the damage dealers, which they do damage. They do damage in lots of different ways. There's people who do damage to multiple targets. There's people who do damage very quickly to one target. It's all a bunch of like higher level strategy. If you have questions about that, I'd say probably ask me otherwise, because it's not going to make sense to people who have never played the game before. And then the last type is the supportive character who has shields, who helps out this team. And of course the characters aren't necessarily clear-cut in League of Legends. A lot of them have mixed types, and you can spec into the support-ish aspects of your character, or the damage types of the character. There's lots of RPG elements in the game. So, one of the roles is the jungler. They spend most of their time in the jungle, and they are the ones that bring action to League of Legends because you don't have vision over them. Now, this isn't necessarily true when you first start playing the game. No one knows what's going on. This is kind of the metagame that has evolved from people playing the game a lot, studying it, and realizing what actually works. The other sources of income, I'll talk about the RPG element. So, there's... Nope, I want to back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize. We're going to go on to champions, right? Like I said, in League of Legends, there's only 2 things that you control as a player: the camera angle, or not the camera, I keep on saying camera angle. The angle doesn't change, it's always from the top. The camera's placement, your vision over the map, and the champion that you control, right? The one character. So this is one of the characters in League of Legends. Her name is Nidalee.
Do you want sound on? Or
Yeah. If
just turn it on. Okay.
her name is Nidalee. Now, every champion in the game has 3 normal abilities, so 3 unique spells that they can cast. 1 ultimate, which generally speaking has a much different effect, or is a lot more powerful, but has a much longer cooldown. And when I say cooldown, I mean the time that it takes before you can cast the spell again. And a passive. The passive you don't need to spec into. It's there from level 1, but it oftentimes defines how the champion plays. All champions, when you start the game, games last, by the way, 20 to 40 minutes, up to an hour if it's a very long game. But all the champions, when you spawn, when you start the game, start at level 1, and they can go up to level 18. You start with no items, and you can end up buying items with gold. As you accrue gold and experience, you just get more powerful, and that's what allows you to take out the higher level objectives in the game, like the turrets, and then get to the inhibitor. So, as the player, you're responsible for controlling 1 champion. This is Nidalee. I'm just going to give you guys, because you haven't seen the game itself yet. Just wanted to just display what some of the abilities look like on a champion. Right? This is Nidalee. Like I said, she's a ranged character. She fills a lot of different roles. She has the support aspect. She has a heal that also increases her allies' attack speed. She also transforms into a cougar. I really wanted to show you guys one of the simplest champions, but sadly there was not the proper context for it with YouTube videos because I don't actually have the game here. So when she turns into a cougar, that's actually her ultimate. She goes into melee, so her attack range is right next to each other, and gains a whole new set of abilities. She's super cute and adorable. Look at it. So she's actually, yeah, that's right. She's actually going through a visual update currently, so that's why this is available. She's one of the older champions. I'm just going to explain a little bit of what she does. So that ability right there is her Q ability. Q is the hotkey that you use for the first ability, so a lot of times people refer to that as Q. And that ability right there, the spear, deals damage based off of how far the spear has traveled. And what it's called a skill shot. So when targeting the ability with, I'm gonna try to get it. Nope. Nope. Sorry. There we go. This line right here, so you can see the cursor. This is the cursor that the player has right here, and this line shows the projectile, projected seed. I can't seem to come up with the word. Trajectory. Thank you. The trajectory of the spear. Right? It's just gonna go in a line. You click anywhere, and it will just go off in that line. If it happens to hit something, that it will do damage based off of how far it traveled. Got it. There's also
the further it travels, it does more damage.
Yes.
Okay.
The further it travels, it deals more damage.
Just means if you run away from it,
you could get
really
and it's a skill shot, like I said, so it doesn't necessarily home on to a target, which generally speaking, it just rewards higher skill. Nidalee is a very high skill champion, high skill cap champion. Her second ability, her W, is a trap. So you saw that little circle that you plant on the ground. Again, you don't need to target anything, just target the ground. It puts a trap there, and whenever an enemy runs over it, or happens to be already on top of it, it gives you sight of the champion, as well as reducing some of their defensive stats. Her third ability is the heal, that increases attack speed as well. There you go, she's attacking faster. And then again, her ultimate is the thing that transforms her into the cougar. In the cougar form, she can leap. She just has some area effect abilities. They just do some damage. But the reason why I'm showing you Nidalee in particular is because the champions in League of Legends are very specific. They're very specified. they have a lot of different uses, and you don't necessarily need to play the same champion every game. As someone who's been playing the game for 3 years, I've played all of the 105 champions that are available multiple times, and what I play in a given game is actually based off of like what our team chooses would be the best pick. Yeah. So people actually get attached to. People actually end up getting attached to the characters or really finding pride in the characters. So there's one video that I'm gonna show. Nope. Hot shot. In the competitive scene, there's pro players. One of them is named Hotshot GG, and his favorite champion is actually in Italy.
On the floor.
I think my favorite champion for the longest time now has to be Nidalee.
The untamed know no fear.
He's been my go-to champion for the past 2 years. I always liked playing for that champion that no one played, and Nidalee was the champion no one played. Once I knew that Nidalee had this high mobility, high pokey aspect, she just could 1v5 teams straight up.
Don't worry if you don't understand what's going on, by the way.
Get them from behind.
It's very difficult
Run
game
away
to really
if you're
understand what's going on if you don't understand.
Treadle's my
all the
very
champions
favorite
do.
to play with. Kind of makes a wall, an immovable pillar that slows everybody and just lets me get these nice cues
He's
in.
currently talking about an ally champion.
A lot of people
Italy does
just
not create
run in and
pillars.
try to do the most damage as fast as possible. Sometimes that's not the best approach. The best approach is to let people die straight up so that you can come in and you can clean up after.
Instinct guides my steps.
He's a great team player.
I'm Hotshot GG from CLG, and my favorite champion is Nidalee.
Alright. So, I know someone who's never played the game before has questions. I know you do. There's something, I did not perfectly cover what champions do.
Related videos. What?
What?
I want that.
Things got awkward.
I'm not sure how that happened.
Why wouldn't I have mentioned it?
Well, yeah.
How could I not?
Okay, so,
I'm not trolling your friend again.
I have a question.
yes.
When we were watching the play, it looked like there were more than 10 people on the field.
Minions, yes. So, what you control as a player are the champions, but there are also computer-controlled AI that just go throughout the 3 lanes I mentioned, bot, middle, and top, that are there to help you take the towers. They spawn every 30 seconds. They're kind of just cannon fodder.
And it's also where you get most of your money.
Yes, they also serve as actually the resource, ironically. The opposing team's allies are actually the resource for you getting more gold and experience, which increases, which makes it stronger. It's a really backwards way of thinking about things, to be completely honest.
It's just like
that
current
your
events or
enemies.
anything else, actually,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in League of Legends is, I'm sorry, I'm butting in.
I'm sorry.
But LoL is different from something like Dota, or Dota 2 rather, where you can kill your own creep. Creep being another word for minion or mob or whatever they call the AI-controlled monsters. But if in Dota 2, if the opponent is about to kill one of your monsters and get money and experience for it, you can kill that monster first. In LoL, you can't do that.
Yep.
Thank freaking God. I completely forgot about that.
So the experience point and gold curve restarts every game.
Yes, every game
Is there
we start
anything
off.
you unlock as time goes on as an experienced player?
There are some out of game. There are some out of game or pre-game, I guess I would rather say, pre-game things called runes and masteries that you can use to better specialize. They basically give you different stats and their choices that you can make into which stats you want to get. So generally speaking, they help define your role or help you just do things better in the.
So there is an
in that
advantage to
game.
being a long-time player, aside from
There
your skill.
is.
Also,
But the
skill champions.
Yeah, no champions.
Right.
Those are so. There's nothing in game when you actually play the game other than runes and masteries that is advantageous to you when you're playing the game itself.
I just want to point out though, one reason people get lower players don't play jungle is because they don't know to. Another one is that it's almost impossible to jungle if you don't have runes of mastery. Right?
Yes.
It's not an insignificant boost that you get.
Mm-hmm. But players of similar level are always matched together. There's a system actually called like summoner level where you start off at summoner level 1 and you eventually grow to summoner level 30. I've been summoner level 30 for like literally 2 years and like 8 months or whatever the exact thing is, right? I forgot that summoner levels even existed halfway through the game, right? Because they were no longer relevant to me. But yes, the summoner levels are basically a built-in way to introduce new players to the game. It's actually rather smart, right? Because you don't have to, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Dan.
Like Dan said, you can't jungle right from when you're summoner level 1 because you don't have the proper runes and masteries to give you the stats to take on the jungle creeps. But what that does is it forces the players who are learning to just go into the lanes, kind of kill the creeps and minions, and not have to worry about like higher level metas and strategies like that.
Sure.
Just learn the basics of the game while taking on. It's also frustrating for people who already understand it from either watching it or maybe getting their account banned or something along those lines because it takes a while to get to like somewhere level 30. But.
Sure. Seems like a perfectly reasonable penalty for
For getting yourself banned, yes.
You did mention summoner spells.
I did not mention summoner spells. That's right.
Don't make them cast.
What'd you say?
That's another thing that gets unlocked.
Spells cast by some.
Yeah, I mean,
you might want to hit on the lore of summoners and champions a little bit because summoner spells don't make sense until you.
Well, it was more of I didn't want to really, like, I could go into a lot of details about the game, right? And as far as like what stats you can empower your champion with, right? And like how items go into that, and like exactly what buffs are on the map and stuff like that. But I figured that's a lot of like nitty-gritty detail that really you don't really understand the full context of unless you understand all of it. And like to go over all of that stuff was trust me, I tried to do that one-on-one with someone and it took like an hour and a half. So so yeah, I mean, I can go into the lore if people are interested.
Can you tell us a bit about the collegiate competitive scene?
Sure.
So how's it structured and what's the deal?
Right. So, feels like you probably know this then. For those who don't know, I'm actually the captain of the MIT team for the collegiate league. There are various collegiate leagues, and it's basically determined by whoever wants to sponsor the tournament. And what happens is they just put up on Reddit or like the League of Legends, they just advertise their tournament, normally with like the prize pool to actually get people to play. And you sign up your team with the appropriate like MIT emailing address like for MIT. And they vary from being like weekend tournaments. So like I said, the games take anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour. So generally speaking, it's best of 3, which means that you'll be to decide which team moves on to the next part of the bracket in a tournament. Generally speaking, it takes 4 hours. Okay, 3 hours. 3 hours is more reasonable because the average game like this is something like 30 minutes. Something like 3 hours. So generally speaking, most of the tournaments actually are seasons. So the one that MIT, that we're currently like focusing on right now, is actually the Collegiate Star League that run the biggest like StarCraft league. And our games are actually every weekend, Saturday. So we have like 3 hours to play our best of 3 match versus the opposing team. And the way they format it is that there's a division, so it's round robin in your division for the first 6 weeks, and then you move on to a single elimination bracket for the tournament that will lead up to the grand finals, and then the winner of the grand finals gets like $40,000 for the team.
So there's round robin, and then the teams with the best performance in round robin then move on to
the highest like the highest team in every division moves
Oh,
on.
really?
to
So
that.
only one team. From
Only
each
one
division?
team per division.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, because there's a lot of colleges that ended up signing up for a $90,000 prize pool. Kind of gets
Yeah.
attention. So,
Is there?
How many?
Because I remember within StarCraft, there's like, I think Azubu has offered
Azubu
like
Azubu is also doing this. Like, I can show you guys the website.
The scholarship which exists now, I seem to remember. Does that also hold for League of Legends?
I don't know about scholarship, but this is the website for the Collegiate Star Weeks, who is funded by Azubu. This is the League of Legends one, and I heard someone ask about how many teams, and this is the list. And I'm pretty sure this is also international. So there's in fact like colleges from all over the world. So.
And right at the bottom, Canada.
And what's a Zubu? Sorry.
Azubu is kind of like Steam without the selling games part. It's a social. What?
It's like a social network.
Yeah, it's a social network.
They're a sponsor.
Okay.
So where do they get their money? Sponsor.
Sponsor.
Are they Korean or are they Chinese?
I don't remember. Wait, I do. They're Chinese because they sponsored the Chinese team
Yeah.
that was in the World Championships. Yeah. All right. Any more questions about game mechanics?
You said the 90,000 prize pool, which usually means like first place, second place, and third place usually get different prize levels.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got
So
the somewhat broken.
first place is
Your
40,000.
second place team might have been knocked out by the first place team in the initial round robin. Kind of bugs in their
I mean,
bracket system.
there are, but I think the way they set up their division is that they basically knew who was coming out anyways. To be completely honest, I think that's probably how they did it.
Sure. So they stacked their divisions so that each top-ranked team was going to win their division.
Probably. That would be my
Okay,
guess.
so that's even more chintzy than I have to claim, actually.
I mean, I'm not an admin. I have no idea, but like,
Sure.
I mean, if I was running the tournament, I would probably say that that's like the best way of ensuring that you get the best matches possible for the finals, which I think is all that the sponsors probably care about.
Sure.
Right?
They've got the money, they get to make the rule there.
Yeah.
So it's not set up by region, like you don't play people in the Northeast.
I mean, you do.
Oh.
You do. Like, our conference plays only people in the Northeast, but, like, a lot of the good teams are from California, right? So it's like, you just put them in different California brackets.
Azubu's Europe, actually.
Europe? I had no
The
idea.
headquarters in Berlin.
Really? Did you know this?
No.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah,
they do have a Korean headquarters as well. But that's more recent.
Actually, since we're on the topic, I'll skip past the whole, like, laning phase part and go to...
Zubu has sort of come out of nowhere as a eSports sponsor and become really huge.
Yeah, I really don't understand them. I just heard of them because they happen to sponsor the...
Probably aliens.
Huh?
Aliens.
It's probably aliens.
Probably.
Germans.
We can take them over through their electronic sports.
Yeah, but since we're talking about the competitive scene, I figured I'd go ahead and show the day one recaps from the World Championships that happened a month ago, I believe now. Of course, teams from around the world competed to be the #1 League of Legends team. It was sponsored by Riot Games. It had 8 million viewers, I think, for streaming. There's lots of different like LoL fandom groups that get together and watch the games, but also like there's like bar crawls for League of Legends now as well as StarCraft. So yeah, let's just watch day one. Also, this video will show a lot of like what what a live event looks like, because live events are
teams fighting for $2
exciting.
million
They're a lot of part of
starts here at
a
LA
lot of part of the
Live.
revenue for
The Season 2 World
for tournaments.
Championship kicks off with 8 of those teams competing in 2 round-robin group stages. The top 2 teams from each group will move on to the quarterfinal round. Let's check out the action from Group A.
Yeah.
The first match of the day featured Azubu Frost, the #1
actually the
seed out
owner
of
of
Korea,
CLG.
against Invictus Gaming, the second-ranked
They
team
look
from
like cute
China.
little YMTs.
Right out of the gates, both teams displayed heavy aggression, and after picking up first blood, Invictus held the lead for most of the early game.
Oh.
Azubu Frost responded by stealing Baron at 23 minutes
So-
and used that momentum to push their way to the first win of the day.
Why?
Up next for Invictus Gaming was fan favorite CLG Prime. Invictus came out
That's
strong,
just confusing.
picking up
Oh,
first
well.
blood for the second game in a row, this time catching double lift out of position.
So first
Not wanting
blood
to go down
is
0-2
bonus gold
early in
given
group
to the
stage, Invictus
first team who
steamrolled
kills the
CLG to
champion.
keep themselves in the hunt for a spot at the group.
Champion kills are worth a lot more money and
Europe's
experience
SK
than
Gaming was
group
up
kills,
next
so.
to take on Azubu Frost. But SK was no match for the champions from Korea. Azubu Frost completely outclassed SK, winning by 10 kills, nearly 20,000 gold, and didn't give up a tower the entire game. The win moved Azubu Frost to 2-0, making them a near shoo-in for the quarterfinals. The two teams that were struggling to make the next round, SK Gaming and CLG Prime, squared off, with each team looking for their first win of the day. CLG came out with a triple teleport split push strategy that they've become very well known for. It was a back and forth match that led to a photo finish where CLG Prime completely surprised SK Gaming. CLG tried to build off of that momentum and even secured first blood in their next game against Azubu Frost, but the Korean team showed why they were unbeaten on the day. They dominated CLG early and never let up. They would secure the victory and their place atop the Group A standings. SK went into the last game of Group A with their tournament lives on the line against Invictus. But it wasn't meant to be for SK, as Invictus' hard initiate comp allowed them to tower dive over and over, eventually leading to a win and a berth into the quarterfinals. The first game in Group B was a matchup of Team Dignitas versus CLG EU, two teams who, surprisingly, have never faced each other at a live event. Dignitas came out with an old-school roaming Taric strategy that allowed them to secure first blood, but despite the pressure from this strategy, CLG was just too good.
I'm gonna skip ahead to
They overwhelmed Dignitas to pick up the valiant effort, but their Cinderella story came to an end when CLG EU pushed their way to victory. CLG now joins Najin Sword as the second team advancing out of Group B.
The World Championships was actually
Their last game of the day, Dignitas was playing for Pride,
Yes.
trying to avoid an 0-3 finish. But the night belonged to
So that comes down
Maxim
to
and
how
Najin
the
Sword, who
competitive
denied
scene
Dignitas a
is made up
stage win.
and how
At
teams
the end
get
of
better.
group play, quarterfinal matchups were
so-
drawn live on stage.
So CLG has
Group A,
actually 4
Invictus
teams.
Gaming
They have
beat Moscow
CLG
5, while Azubu
Prime,
Frost
they have CLG
beat Solo.
Black, they have CLG
From
EU,
Group B, CLG
and oh wait, they only have 3
will
teams.
lead, and Najin Sword will face off
Huh?
against Taipei
Well,
Ascent.
CLG Prime is CLG NA.
Quarterfinal action will be fierce as the world's
So
top
these are the
teams
brackets
battle it
after the
out
first
to see
day.
who will make it to the World Championship final with a chance to play for $1 million.
Yeah, sorry, CLG only has 3 teams. There's a couple teams that have like 4 teams, so.
There's multiple super teams too, aren't there? There's
There are.
Dawson and those
Basically,
Super Raspberry or whatever.
every
they are.
single sponsor or set of sponsor has multiple teams, generally speaking, from different regions. One, because they won't ever have to be forced to compete in regional tournaments, and thus they're more likely to get more sponsorship at Worlds, right, and like international events. But the other part is that for teams to get better, they need to play versus 5 organized groups of individuals.
So they scrim with each other.
So they scrim with each other, like very, very consistently. This is, like, in fact, the defining characteristic of good StarCraft teams, or well, players, I guess, is that they have good scrim partners. The North American scene a year ago was really bad in comparison to the European scene. The Asian scene hadn't even been developed, to be completely honest. The Asian scene, like, was developed something like 8 months ago, when they finally got their own servers for League of Legends. So in 8 months, the Asian teams, Korean and Chinese and Taiwan, Taipei Assassins are the team that actually ended up winning the World Championships. So within 8 months, they went from not playing the game at all, not knowing anything about it, to winning. And it all comes down to how their attitudes towards the game, and their practice regiments, and practicing for 10 hours a day, right, against other people who have the same goal. The North American teams, on the other hand, were a lot more isolated. I cannot speak today. Isolated. Thank you. I'm trying to mix words. Were a lot more isolated, and as a result, they didn't have anyone pushing them to get better constantly, because if they won tournaments, why did it matter, right? It's like, why would we need to spend 8 hours of our day practicing to get better if we are already beating the second best North American team.
There's also a much stronger tradition of MOBA play in Southeast Asia, I guess.
Yes, there is.
Asia generally.
Mm-hmm. But still, 6 months
China
to
particularly.
learn the details of
Yeah.
League of Legends, right? There are a lot of things that differ between League of Legends and Dota. I think one of the most common misconceptions is that they play very similarly, where you actually have to be thinking about completely different things while playing the games. So yeah.
Got a question from the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Right, how about Riot forgetting about the concept of screen peeking? What is screen peeking?
Screen peeking. So the way that the World Championships was on the first day, that was the day that we solved, was physically set up as a live event. Riot Games put the event outside in California, and the way that it was set up was that the computers were in the space that, like, in the same space as the audience, as well as the screen that the audience is watching off of, is spectating off of.
I see.
Right? So there's a spectator mode in League of Legends, and there are casters, just like any sports casters, in which they're the ones like telling you like what's going on in the action, just giving you different insights. They're the ones controlling the camera, like the perspective that all of the spectators are seeing, right? Which is different than what the players are focusing on when they're playing. And there were some cases where when the game was paused during the first day, some of the players who could see the screen and see it from the non-fog of war, because the spectator is basically omniscient, right? Looked up at the screen and got information from that, and they were penalized as a result. I mean, it was an oversight by Riot Games, and I think that they will never overlook it again. I think that's basically
What was the penalty?
The penalty was Azubu lost part of their prize money.
Okay.
They lost part of their prize money, and if they basically determined that it had no significant, like, huge significant impact on the actual outcome of the game. If it had an impact on the outcome of the game, then the games would have been replayed. Yeah.
Can you, following up on that, can you talk about the difference between how esports in general, but also MOBA and RTS in particular, are played in Korea compared to in the US, like physical space-wise?
Physical space-wise. Oh, yes.
Because it relates to this topic.
Yeah, of course. So the proper way, I guess the way that's been developed in Korea for professional sports is that the players are in the same space as the audience and the screen that the audience is looking over, but they're actually put into soundproof booths that they can't see out of because they're just supposed to be focusing on the computer screen. And there were soundproof booths at the finals for League of Legends, but not at this open space arena. So that was another reason why it actually would occur, and it's probably not going to occur again because I'm sure that they're probably gonna ensure that they have booths that they're going. Yeah.
It's really weird that they did that. So I remember I saw a league being played at MLG Providence, so a year-ish ago, and when they were commentating that, they were doing it live without booths, but there was a 2-minute delay between the game and the commentary. So, I mean, unless somebody's been waiting in the jungle for 2 minutes to try and ambush somebody, then there's no way that they could get any information.
So
which is interesting.
That's how spectating works if you want to watch a game right now.
So that's how spectating normally works. That's how spectating works on live, as in like the version of League of Legends that you and me play.
Yeah.
Tournaments are actually hosted on a very specific client. There's actually the tournament client that's dedicated for tournaments, and you only have a tournament account if there's a Riot sanctioned tournament that's going on. So on the tournament client, all of the champions are unlocked, all of the runes are available. There's nothing holding you back as a player from playing at the highest level of play that you can. And on the client, spectating, I think there's an option. They either was initially it was mandated that it has to be 3 minutes, or there was an option, and now I know that it's just all the time it's not. there's no delay on spectating for tournaments because the spectators, you'll always know who they are. They'll be for the tournament, and they're going to have some way of preventing teams from knowing what's going on. That was before that particular thing was developed, though.
That's important for production for esports as well, because you want to be able to cut from like what you're seeing on the spectator screen to like first-person views of what the person's doing on the screen at the time, or like what's the response of people in the booth,
celebrating the game still going on.
Yeah.
So actually, there's
Pretty easy to solve actually. Like just, I mean, for live broadcast it'd be tough, but for a 5-minute delayed broadcast, fine. I'll cut between players and reaction shots as if it were simultaneous because
They want-
whatever.
They want people who are in the stadium watching these people play on the screen to when they get like a pentakill fist pump.
Actually,
and then
there's
have that happen on the screen at the same time and like have it.
Well, what I'm saying is that you can do that very easily actually if you just.
But in person.
In person, yeah. In person you can't just.
in person on live. In some events where they do have the 3-minute delay, it's really odd because for the players because they'll hear cheers for what was going on. 3 minutes delayed, so they're like,
Right.
we just lost this major objective called Baron, and well, this sucks. And then it's like 3 minutes later, it's like, yep, there's the cheers for it. Yeah, the 3-minute delay is mostly for non-tournaments now, I think, or non like really high production value. Yeah.
So in the StarCraft community, at the pro level, there's a lot of discussion about the the payouts for tournaments not really being set up for people to be able to make a living off pro play properly.
Mm-hmm.
And basically that just comes down to the prize pools are large, but they're very top heavy.
Right.
So if you're like one of the 10 best players in the world, then you can make a living and you're pretty well off. And if you're anyone other than the top 10 players in the entire world out of the however many decreasing number of people that play StarCraft 2, then you're boned.
So
that's even more of a problem when you're splitting your prize money 5 ways.
Actually,
right?
that problem's now mute because Riot themselves are sponsoring, well not sponsoring, but giving salaries to professional players as of Season 3. They'll be having weekly games as well between teams that they like officially host and put out, and I'm sure are going to, get revenue, like ad revenue from those games. So
that's the best investment they could possibly make. I mean, compare the cost of paying someone to play your game professionally for a year to the cost of an entire ad campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they still have the same problem that StarCraft and others have, really, is that there's the player identification. Like, you don't have the same thing with live sports where, oh, I've seen that player, I know that player, when they're running around on the field, whatever sport it is, I can have an association with them.
Actually, there's a huge fan base for particular players, in both play style and in just like the champions that they choose to pick. And people definitely know the site of players because streams from like World Championships, just through the main way that current pros actually make a living is through streaming. So they have a webcam, they're playing the game just by themselves, in fact, and they have 10,000 people at a time watching them play the game with the webcam on them. So, I mean, I can recognize all the pros. Anyone who actually follows League of Legends, just like anyone who follows
a professional physical sport.
And also, as a more newbie, not newbie, but not competitive, like just guides, knowing which players write the best guides, you start recognizing names of professional players.
Plus, I hate to call them, it's summoner names, right? I was going to say gamer tags. Well, but I mean, but an individual's tag is probably more important in the world of esports than their actual physical appearance.
Sure.
Especially because as you're watching, like you saw, you always see their name. Right?
Yeah, their name is over their champion, right? So when Katarina dives into the opposite team and is like, knives everywhere, and then everyone's dead, you're like, oh, that cat is name.
It's very important for the summoner names to be on top of them because the champions can change. And in fact, in the in the World Finals, the actual final matches, there were the mid laners were actually the champion Karthus versus the champion Anivia, the game 1, and then the team switched the champion picks. So the person who was playing for Azubu, who played Karthus in the first game, was then playing Anivia. And in game 2, the person who was playing Anivia was playing Karthus.
Is there blind choices? Like I choose my team loadout without no ability to do
It's
anything?
draft.
Yeah,
It's draft. So
okay.
it actually goes back and forth, and there's bans that you can do as well.
Right.
So you start off with 3 bans, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Isn't it 1,
So
1,
3
2,
for each
2,
team.
2, 2?
It's for bands. It's
Bands
1.
is 1. Oh,
When you say
And then-
bands or bands?
Bands.
So
As
I can
in,
say you can't play this
you
character.
cannot play this character.
Excellent.
Neither team can pick this player or champion. Excuse me.
Got it. So in that case, then it turns a little bit more baseball-like of, oh, this player plays like that, therefore I want to.
I personally, honestly, have the most fun or want to see more than anything else the champion pick / champion select. As a player, I'm really tied to the strategic aspect of League of Legends, which is why the constantly changing and updated maps is really interesting for me. I legitimately read patch notes like it's Christmas or something. And I'm just oh, this is so interesting that this is what they chose to do to bring down a character's power level. But the champion picks and bans are honestly the dominating portion of the strategy, and then the actual game itself is the execution and the.
I see. So that selection in your mind sort of is more important than the half hour that follows.
In my mind, yes.
I'm sure that people
Yeah.
watch baseball
Well,
the same way. It's
yeah. Oh, sure.
What players are playing today? Okay, that's all I need to
Oh
know.
yeah. Which if you're making a bet on a baseball game, it's canceled for different pitchers.
The flashy part is during the 30-minute part. All the flashy,
Sure.
People getting pentakills and if you want to watch a player, lots of people cheer in the crowd, huge cheers for someone just picking a champion because they want to see them play that champion.
Got it.
Yeah, it's very the same phenomenon happens in the fighting game community. Actually, I mean, at Evo last year, not this year, but last year, someone played Zangief in the Super Street Fighter 4 finals, right? And the whole room was like, "Holy shit, Zangief!" And he was playing on a pad, not arcade stick, right?
Which man was clear he's doing it.
I know,
wrong.
He might as well have shown up with a
Did he win?
Steam-powered
Please tell
computer,
me he
right?
won.
Yeah, I hope he won.
He actually got really far, and he beat Justin Wong, which was funny as shit. Let's say that. But and the other thing to notice is I watched a couple of games of the finals, and if you're in a bronze elo schmuck like myself, who is not in the ranks of the gods, whatever, watching the bans that I see people do when I play ranked, and then watching the bans that happen when, as I think I watched in the Subaru versus Taipei game, did they play against each other?
Yeah, that was the finals. That wasn't.
Yeah. I watched them banning champs, and I'm why would you do that, right? Because I'm used to Shen has never played, Morgana's never played, Blitz has never played, because people in my elo are they're terrible, they'll kill everyone, right? And then at the highly competitive level, they're just
At the highly competitive level, every champion, the game is actually pretty balanced, considering the scope of it.
Let's talk about that, because my favorite comment from either the championship this year or last year was after one of the teams won, if they interview the team there, and the comment that I'm pretty sure it might have even Hotshot GG was his comment was oh no, we just play broken champs and win. That was his comment.
Alex Siege. It was Alex Siege.
Okay.
Alex Siege.
So it just made me wonder about the community and the relationship they even have with the company. Here's this company who's putting on this big tournament for you, hopefully a big payout, and the thing you do is slam their game, being yeah, they have broken code characters and we just play those and win.
So broken is very specific. Huh?
You should totally show them that video I showed you.
Oh God. Okay.
It totally illustrates this point, and I don't even remember what you do to search to find it. I know it's in my favorites.
Yes, I know.
The best champion.
I know what you're talking about.
I mean, it kind of speaks to your point where a lot of the game is all about the picks and not the play.
So
they don't comment about how this person played poorly. It's oh, you played a Tarek. You're stupid.
And I'm curious what the role of the way that there are new champions like every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
What does that do to screw up competitive play, and what's broken and what isn't, and how balanced the game is?
So
well, it's important to. Sorry, it's your show. I'll shut up.
I can answer this. So no champion. There were some cases in the past where they've released new champions and they didn't really understand. This was when Riot was still growing as a company, in my mind. I mean, they're obviously still growing, right? But like they're still relatively new when it comes to making League of Legends, and they didn't actually fully understand the game itself. And they would put out champions that are literally just way too good in comparison to everything else, and they bring those down immediately. Currently in the game, there's no champion that's just like, this champion's broken. They have no weaknesses, right? What Alex Itch?
I don't know. Is that right?
Yes, it is right.
Right now.
Yeah. When Alex.
But you know that in the head of every LoL player in this room, everyone heard you say that sentence, and then went except champion.
No.
I immediately went except Darius, right? Like
except Darius. Darius is very easy to counter in lane, and there's a lot of things that you can do in the game to prevent Darius's damage. Darius is a character who he's melee. All he does is damage. So his passive, 2 of his normal abilities and his ultimate. Do you know what he does? Okay.
I know of him.
Okay. I mean, I think Darius is the perfect example because everyone like reaps on Darius because he does lots of damage, and he's very easy to just kind of steamroll people with, if that makes sense. If you don't know what's going on, he shows up and then all of a sudden you're dead. If you understand what's going on, you don't let that happen to you. But the way that you do that is by playing a ranged champion or someone with ranged abilities. So this is why the draft is actually very, very important, and why I never, ever, ever play anything except for draft. I don't like just having like blind picks.
Now you never play with Heimerdinger.
So there are champions that are particularly, but generally speaking, the ones that are way too good are quickly brought down to make sure that it's not just people being forced to play them because they're too good. So in the case of Darius, he's a melee champion. All of his abilities require you to get close to use them, right? And he doesn't really have any natural escapes, so he doesn't have any way of increasing his mobility across the map. Generally speaking, he's played top lane. So in that top...
The one on the top.
Yeah, the one on the top. And you can see, so... Okay, this goes into a lot of the higher level strategy that I wasn't planning on going to, but it's fine. Mid lane. The reason why you find AP carries there, I apologize if you don't know what I'm talking about. But
magical people.
Magic-based damage.
Why don't they just call it that?
Magic-based damage dealers go mid. The reason why they go mid is because it's the safest lane to go to. They're generally speaking, people who require spells to do damage are bursty, right? They do all of their damage and they leave, right? If they get in range of you, they do their damage, they leave. That's exactly what they want to do. What ends up happening is they need to be played mid because middle lane is the shortest distance between any of these towers, right? Bottom, there's this much distance. Mid, there's a very small amount of distance. So this actually plays very well for bursty characters, right? You use your burst, and when your burst is down, you are extremely vulnerable. You can't do anything. You can't fight back to anyone, right? So if the jungler comes in from the side when your spells are down, you need to be in short range of your tower so you can get back to safety and then maybe use your spells again. That's why that's played there. Then there are the 2 more unsafe lanes.
I don't need you to teach me how to play LoL.
Okay.
I need you to tell me what is interesting about a game where it's all about adding more champs, adding more rules, and finding exploitations, versus having a game that doesn't really change, and now it's more about evolving strategy. Like, I would say that, like, StarCraft, maybe I don't know this, but StarCraft, I assume, is very balanced, and is more about, there's not really exploitations, it's more chess-like, it's strategy, it's you did this move, you did this thing, and that kind of thing, versus League of Legends is constantly, here's a new champ, like, fine, we'll maybe release it with some bugs, and the community will find out. It's a crowdsourcing of like what's overpowered by it. We'll nerf it or buff it or do whatever to make it thing. But it's always constantly just like adding more stuff and iterating. And I don't know other games. I don't know real sports that do that. That like just iterate so much, and the game is about finding these exploitations rather than, like I said, like skill and.
So it's definitely a unique scenario with the new champions, but you can look at it. The question of balance doesn't need to be about like adding new things to the game, because one champion and their presence on the entire impact of the game, when there's 105 of them, isn't going to necessarily impact the entire metagame. If that makes sense.
I don't know. I feel like he's never fallen backwards though. Where because there's 105, it would be a lot easier for something to slip by. A lot of stuff. Like if there's like 10 or 9.
This is going on with Pokemon. But they have videos.
And I want to problematize that word, exploitation. I'm gonna put on my scholar hat now because I paid for that PhD. I know it's not necessarily about how can I find the most broken champion and use them to win forever. I mean, it's very telling.
Smash Brothers community. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, Smash Brothers Melee is a good point. You really want to entertain yourself? Go to the Smash World forums and try to find any thread about Meta Knight. That will crack your ass up. And you might know different, but as far as I can tell, usage statistics when new champions are released go like this. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they're used really heavily for about a week, and then nobody hears from them ever again. Because new champions are not new champions. They're usually reshufflings and tweaks on existing core mechanics, right? There's Nidalee, there's Jace, there's Elise. All three of these play somewhat differently, but they're all based on this core mechanic of having 2 forms that you switch at will with 2 different sets of abilities, and these enable 2 different play styles, right? So, and it's like all of the AP carries, if you look at their abilities, they've got the nuke, they've got the AoE, they've got the CC, and then they've got the ult that does something interesting for each character, right? So, I feel like this scenario you're envisioning where people are like, how can I best exploit this new thing that went in to win, is something that would function long term. Diana is an excellent example. She was a champion that went in a month and a half.
2 months. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. She was a magic caster, and she was very tough. Like, she was more built for the jungle, right? She had a lot of defense built in, which is rare for an AP, a magic-based character. And her... how can I do this without getting into nitty-gritties? Like, her abilities benefited a lot from stacking more magic power, right? They're called ratios. How much of that, when you build it, goes into what you do. So she was extremely powerful. And then in about 2 weeks, they nerfed her into the dirt, right? Like, she went from played all the time to played never. And now, 2 months later, she's back into circulation. Why? Because they fixed it, right? So if you were playing Diana and your idea was, I'm going to exploit the fuck out of this new character, right? You got about 2 weeks of wins, maybe, and then that's probably never going to happen again.
So I want to bring some context into this. For starters, generally speaking, at tournament play, they ban, like, you cannot pick or ban or do anything. You don't play the game with the newest release champion for generally speaking a month, because when you have this many people playing the game, they tend to figure out how strong the champion actually is very quickly. Riot Games themselves, Morello, the lead designer, actually talks a lot about, because that concern of like, well, you're adding more champions to the game, doesn't that inherently make it more imbalanced? And Morello's response to that is actually that they don't necessarily correspond with one another. You know, having 200 champions doesn't make it necessarily impossible to balance. It just means that you need more time and more people, right, who are actually like designers, right? The people who spend their entire days, their jobs, thinking about how to make things balanced, right? You need more of those people to tackle on those problems. And the thing is, they've been doing it for now 4 years, and we've gotten to the state where the game is relatively balanced. They have standards for what they put into the game now, and they have a public beta environment that is designed for figuring out how new characters fit into the game.
But they invite tournament players to play in the PvE, right?
They invite, yeah,
And,
it's an
and
entire
others,
range of people.
And others.
Because
yes.
they care about all levels of play,
Right.
not just at the tournament level.
Anyone can sign up. It's just you can only sign up on the first 3 days of the month. I think.
Yeah, there's a very specific time where you can sign up.
I have a related question, which is like, the real concern maybe might not be that you have a character which is too weirdly different to everything else, but rather that you have a character which is too closely related to another character, because that means that the ban system stops working properly because you can't ban out both characters.
Both characters do the same overpowered thing.
Yeah.
So the thing is, every single character.
Is that a thing?
No, it's not. Every single character is unique in their own way. Okay, except for Annie. Annie is the one exception who Annie is the longest standing, most basic mage you could play in the game, and currently sees basically no play, because every single mage in the game, whatever you would want Annie to do, there's a mage who can do it better, right? That's the thing, is that in League of Legends, the roles are specified, because what works, what the game profits, it encourages. The game encourages specified roles and speccing into very particular goals. And I'm not being very specific. I'm going to get more specific right now. So there are like 4 different type of team compositions that are viable to like win the game, right? The objective of the game is not to kill enemy champions, so you in theory never have to touch an enemy champion, right? But generally speaking, you have to kill the enemy champions before it's safe enough for you and your team to take on major objectives like the turrets. So the major compositions that you normally see are team fight compositions, where you expect both teams to be in 5-on-5, right? And they just like bump heads, and they use their abilities, and whoever's the most skilled, has the most skilled set of players, comes out on top. There's poke, in which you have the 5-on-5 scenario, but instead of, as soon as one team comes like close enough to it, they just back off, and they have longer ranged abilities, which allows them to whittle down their opponent's health into a point where it's then favorable for them to fight in the 5-on-5 scenario. There's split push, which is something that CLG Prime was really big on, in which there's 3 lanes, and there's actually a lot of distance in between the lanes. So if you have one person bottom, you can have 4 people hold off the 5 by the tower, right? Because the tower is basically doing as much damage as an extra player would, right?
Champions that are specifically geared towards
Yeah.
clearing waves.
There are champions that are specifically geared towards buckling down and turtling, right? And defending one particular point very, very well. And then another team, just by themselves, or one member of the team, just comes out and is taking down major objectives like the turrets by themselves with minions. Because that's totally doable if there's no champion to defend it, right? The 4th one is kind of the assassination team, or like turret divey comp, which has a lot of single target burst damage, so it does damage to one person really, really quickly, and just kind of eliminates them from the fight. So it doesn't really matter what the scenario is, or like where the team is on the map. That team just wants to find the one high priority target, kill that person, and then they're like, well, we killed that one person, we can now take on the rest of the team, 4 people. Those are the major team compositions, and every single champion is unique enough to fit into one of those compositions fairly well. If there's one that's not quite up to par, generally speaking, Riot buffs them into a role that allows them to fit one of these compositions. The case that you're worried about is that we played overpowered champions. Now it's not a fact, it's an opinion, right? Alex Ich in particular feels like Zillion is broken, right? He's overpowered, he's too good for what he is, and yet it's not what you need to play the game properly. You need to have a team composition that benefits Zillion in particular, and really you need a hyper carry basically. Zillion allows a hyper carry, someone who scales extremely well with items and abilities, to just steamroll the other team. And Zillion's like, I can give them another life essentially, right? And that's why he's like, why would you not? You have this Kog'Maw who does like 1,000 damage and 1 auto attack, and it's like you can give them another life. Of course that's broken, right? It's like this is just overpowered. But the thing is, if the Kog'Maw can't ever get to your team, if you're running poke, you're just, again, not doing this 5-on-5 engage thing, the Zillion doesn't matter at all. The Zillion's not doing anything. The Zillion's completely irrelevant. It all comes down to the team picks and compositions and one thing countering the other, which is why I find the team picks to be so interesting. And you can basically determine, okay, the outcome is not, by no means is the outcome determined beforehand. It all comes down to player skill. But a lot of times you can see the base roots of players screwing up and making mistakes and losing the game in the picks, in not playing their team composition properly and not recognizing how their team comp needs to play to beat out the opposing team comp. Yes.
So, I've recently been playing some Dota 2, and before that I was playing League of Legends, and they do the pick ban thing differently from each other.
I like theirs.
So yeah, like I was wondering about that because I mean, the Dota 2 one seems to make a bit more sense. Like, do you have a comment on like on upfront banning? Because like it seems, if I've scouted your team before, so I know personally what you like to pick and are good at, then then the League of Legends ban system makes sense. But if I want to like be strategic about the composition and force you out of a composition that you're trying to form, then the bans in the middle of the pick seem to make more sense.
So the
right?
way that Dota 2 does picks and bans is, sorry, oh, I want to take this phone call. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I will be right back.
You explain the Dota 2 ban system.
Okay. So if I remember right, LoL is teams alternate banning 4 champions each.
3 champions.
3 champions each. And Dota is 4 champions, but you do it in... Oh no, is it 6 champions, but you do it in rounds of 3, I seem to remember? Anybody? I don't know. But basically...
How do you ban 6 champions in Dota 2? That's like
because there are like...
a third of the champions.
Because there are like 120 or something.
In Dota 2?
Like that, yeah. But anyway, the point is, in Dota 2, you ban 3, then you pick 3 champs, and then there's another round of banning of 3 per team, and then you pick the remaining 2 champs for your team. So basically, you straight up say, okay, here is what I'm afraid of your team playing, or that I just don't want to see in this game at all. Like then you start setting up your team's composition. And then both teams get a chance to react to what they see that the other team is trying to pick.
That's much smarter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's like Texas Hold'em.
Yeah,
It's actually almost kind of like a baiting thing. Like you can
Yeah.
like say, look, we're gonna try to play this, and you're like, oh, we'll ban this then. Like,
Yeah.
I expect you to ban this, so we're gonna do this, but we actually want to do it with this.
Yeah, but so there's more going on as well because League of Legends has settled into this really fixed metagame, which is very strange, where like there are, how many people already know this? Like, so there's generally a top lane, a single solo top lane, AP mid, hard carry down the bottom with support that doesn't kill any minions, and then a roaming jungler. And those are the 5 things that you want on your team. But in Dota 2, that is just not a thing. Like, the roles are way more fluid. And there isn't that kind of fixed metagame.
But that took a long time to get to, right? I mean, I remember when I started
think
playing,
that's
it was
why you can
80
have
mid,
the
right?
ban mid and not ruin a team.
What took a long time to get to?
That
Dota 2's fluidity?
No. The league.
But Dota 2 is Dota. It's been around for like since
Yeah, but
Warcraft
who's
3.
played it in the past 8 years?
A lot of people.
A lot of people.
A lot of people.
Yeah, like it has its
a
metagame is like
it's
so
fun.
much deeper.
Like it's been played competitively for 8 years consistently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but has it been played casually for 8 years?
Yeah, that too.
I mean,
And
it's
it's
hard
always
to-
had a lot of bases.
It's hard to just like.
You may not
have a
see it
game
in
professional.
America as much, but you definitely see it in like
China
China and Korea. Yeah, like G Arena is actually the main reason why it's played through G Arena. But so To answer your question, yes, I totally think that it should be instantly implemented into League of Legends. I think it increases the strategy like immensely. I don't think it should be implemented into the normal play. I think it should be just tournament play that does this, because really individuals like bans in solo queue when you're playing by yourself is really more of a checks and balances system for like what currently dominates solo queue too much. Like legitimately that's more of what bans are focused on. There's not so much a strategic element to bans in solo queue, but in tournament play I definitely think that there should be
Tournament planning 5v5 or
5v5 competitive
Yeah.
teams who
Organized.
professionally fight together.
I mean, it makes sense to ban a character that will be a counter pick to one of the positions in the composition that you want to run, right?
So as
that makes sense.
as a team captain, right? I've come up with my own like push strategies that are extremely radical, and like not many people play them. And there are very particular champion counters that if they knew it was coming, it would just like ruin our strategy.
Yeah.
And it would be extremely useful in the strategic development, instead of putting all of my eggs in one basket at the beginning of the game, to be allowed to have one ban that allows us flexibility. So we have a pick like, what I really like to see is champions like Jace, in fact, actually, because he has long range poke. He has long range poke, but he can also do team fighting really, really well. And he can also take on multiple different roles. He can kind of sort of jungle. You mostly see him top, but he can also be played as an AD carry. So what I really like to see is the middle bans, where you ban out something that would be really good against either of your two compositions. You pick one part of your composition. You see the enemy's picks. You're like, which composition of ours that we have pre-listed does better versus that? And then start working out that way. I would really like to see that. I think that it increases the strategic element like tenfold.
Do we have a sense of why there's no major metagame in Dota 2?
There is. It's
So
just that
it's just way more fluid.
Okay. Or well, like what? Why?
Yeah, I was
also
going to ask
younger.
that. Like, why is the metagame in LoL the way it is now? Like in Dota 2, there are way more ways to play the game, it seems, than there are in LoL. And Riot has really embraced the emerging metagame in LoL as well.
Yeah,
so, like,
they did. With
so does that mean that
recognizing
it's now
that
like
jungle
self-reinforcing as well, because they're now going to develop champs which are specifically playing to that metagame?
It's clear that Riot Games did not intend to release the game and have the jungle be a thing. I think that they probably had a very serious talk and lengthy discussion about should they support the jungle, should they make it so that there are particular jungle champions. And I think that what it comes down to, the reason why the League of Legends metagame is the way that it currently is, with an AD carry at bottom. AD carry stands for attack damage, by the way, so they mostly use their attacks to deal damage. A support at bottom with AD carry is because the AD carry mostly scales, as in gets better with items, right? Not so much with level, right? A champion gets stats when they level up, and also gets access to higher ranks of their spells. But if they're not using their spells to do damage, they're actually using their auto attacks. Turns out they actually scale better with items, which means that they need to be able to farm very well, which means that the support of having another person in the lane that allows them to get the farm is rather important. That's why you see those two together in the lane almost no matter what. You want to get your AD carry to be able to kill creeps reliably.
Why bottom versus top? Why bottom versus top?
Bottom because it's closer to Dragon.
Okay.
Dragon is right here, located in this pit. Dragon is an objective normally taken early game. The reason why it's not top is because Baron literally does not matter until at least 15 minutes, because it doesn't spawn until 15 minutes, and even then it's way too strong for people to take it on. You want to have, if you had, what happens in competitive play lots of times now is that you have lane scaling that happen, and one of the things that you need to keep track of if you have two people in your top lane is the threat of them having so much map control in your 2v1 bottom, two people here, one people here, that this one person's always pushed up to the tower, the two people leave, mid comes here, the jungler's here, and they do dragon by themselves. And then you've lost your dragon timer, they're up in objective global gold. That's why the two people go bottom.
Dragon gives your whole team a lot of gold when you kill it, right?
Fine.
Thank you.
What about the just really quick? Since the map is slightly asymmetric, right? Does that have any effect?
Yes, it does. It has a huge effect on both strategy and the outcome of games. I think blue side, which is this side over here, wins 52% of the time, 53% of the time.
And is that because they have the double golems in the bottom?
It's a part of double golems. So the jungle camps, one of them right here is called double golems. It gives golden experience. It gives the most amount of experience of any of the jungle camps. Because they're 2 people bottom, it turns out that the 2 people, not the jungler, not people who normally would be able to do things in the jungle, because the jungle's like huge camps. Because they're 2 people, they could take the mini golems. Where on the blue side, whereas purple, it didn't really have the same safe thing. They're fixing that this upcoming patch.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're fixing that, and then honestly, that doesn't contribute as much to blue team winning, nearly as much as blue team's ease of getting in and out of Baron. If purple team is winning, so the dominant way, like metagame for the most part, revolves around team fights, because team fights are really easy for people to understand. If you have 5 people who are not on voice chat, not voice over IP, they kind of just bash their heads together, they fight, they duke it out because they want kills, they're not thinking of objectives. You don't see poke ever in solo queue when people are playing by themselves. You don't see push strategies. You don't see protect the AD carry comps as much. I mean, they do happen because, you know, they're basically teamfight comps that just revolve around one person, but you don't see them as often. So teamfight comps will always want to go after Baron. Baron is this huge objective that's right here. It takes probably anywhere between, I'm going to say, 15 and 25 seconds of your entire 5 members of your team focusing in on the one target. And that target will deal a lot of damage to you as well. So you're very vulnerable while you're doing Baron. If your team is down, so you know you're on the worst end and you're purple side, so this is your base. This entire half of the jungle, because it's closer to your base, you're more likely you're safer there. You're closer to any towers that are up here. So if these towers are still up, they give you not only vision but also like deterrent from the enemy team. So you're generally speaking safer on this part of the map. And the problem is that when you're doing Baron and you're all here, if you're blue team and you see the enemy coming, you can just back out here to your side within seconds. If you're purple team, you need to like escape up, escape down. You're not safe. They're fixing that with this patch by removing this literally, it's the smallest change. It's actually really impressive to me. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
They're taking out this
ramp,
so that
right.
it's a lot easier to get into the Baron pit. I still am not completely convinced that that's going to do it all because you can't pull Baron out of the pit, but it completely nullifies the whole dragon.
Also, killing Baron gives both a lot of gold and a huge statistical buff to your whole party.
Thank you.
And what about stealing, right? Stealing dragon and stealing Baron. Is that still, like, it seems like purple has a better chance?
I mean, purple has a better chance, but you can't. So yes, it's easier in theory for purple to steal it, but if you're blue side, you can still go around that back side if you have enough control. And the more relevant part is that a lot of times, like if you're like, I cannot fight, I need to steal Baron, that's like how many times you're actually going to steal Baron, right? Like 1 out of 20 games, 5% of the time. That's not a good enough reliable thing to actually like reliably be like, this side has an advantage.
Right.
Whereas blue side, if purple team is doing it and purple's ahead, blue team can easily poke at the champions while doing it and get away safely, which is substantially more relevant.
Right.
So that's probably why you see the 52-48 split. Actually, someone in the World Championships, CLG, Hotshot GG in fact, attributed their losses to always being purple side, which I think is hilarious because my team always wins when we're on purple side. I never wins when we're on blue. That's the blue versus purple. Yeah. Sorry, I'm always looking at my phone because I'm in theory supposed to be back to the house by 6. Yeah.
So you've been so convincing about how it's called perfectly balanced, right? Like how perfectly balanced is so great for like champs.
Yeah.
Why not maps?
I mean, there is This map could be. So,
I'm saying, like, why don't they have, so what is this called? This is
Summoner's Rift.
Summoner's Rift. Why isn't there a Summoner's Ice World, a Summoner's Desert, and like just completely different maps?
Oh, completely
also?
different maps.
There are.
There are. They're completely different. They're completely different modes as well. There's one that's 3-on-3. There's one that has entirely different objectives.
It's a Rafi Basin. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
Yeah.
It's King of the Hill. It's,
Yeah,
it's,
King of the Hill's a
it-
lot of
well,
points.
it's
Well, okay,
Capture
so that's
the
a
Flag
different.
plus King of the Hill.
Yeah, that's a
Dominion.
that's a different. All right,
Dominion.
but that's a different game. I mean,
I know what you're saying. 5-on-5, same items, same everything, just different map. They were looking into that at one point.
okay.
That's actually what the Crystal Scar, this Dominion mode that we were talking about, came into being.
I see.
They originally was for that, and they just made a high-level decision of just saying, you know what? The map changes the way characters are played more than anything else, right? What's good on this map is entirely different than what's good on any other map. Even if it's still 5-on-5, just because of the features of the map, right? Like I just said, like not based on characters alone, just like 52% of the time, the overall like thing, like 52% is like how much Obama won by, right?
Right.
Right, like it's
Weirdest.
Good job there.
You know why? It was because he was on blue side.
Oh!
What if only white men played League of Legends? Oh wait. I would also say they do rework maps. Like the 3v3 map, Twisted Tree Line, they just made a massive overhaul of that map. Where it used to be this like warren of fog of
I
war
get that, but it's
tunnels
still a
and
different.
stuff.
It's 3v3 now, not 5v5. So as a counterexample, take.
if you're talking
Team
about
Fortress,
first-person shooters are like they live on the difference of maps.
Right.
Like Halo competitiveness completely entirely lives on the different portion of maps.
Right,
But the thing is that you
the
have
shooters don't change.
Yes, but the characters also don't change. If you had 102 different characters that you can play in Halo, all with unique abilities, right? Then you would probably start to see this just players being overwhelmed, right? Like how do you balance? How do you figure out what's good? How do you really strategize for 102 different characters on 3 different maps? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you just use that same argument about having 102 champs on one map. About
Except that one,
I
I feel as if one expedites things exponentially, and the other one is not the same. Yeah, it's like linear, right?
Mass Effect 3's multiplayer is another good example of this, right? Because it is like an FPS. People
play that?
But
Hey! It has a multiplayer?
Shut up.
I didn't know it had a multiplayer.
Go to hell, go to hell, go to hell.
I said
Wait, what's
I was
Mass
yelling at
Effect?
him.
But the deal is there is more character variability in Mass Effect 3 multiplayer than there is in something like Team Fortress 2, I think, right? Not counting an endless array of hats. But the deal is BioWare has actually made a very Riot-like focus, right? Like they've released new maps and they've tweaked the maps a little bit to add passages, but mostly what they've released is new kits and new weapons. And what people are doing in the meta of Mass Effect 3 multiplayer is the same thing they're pretty much doing
There is
in the
a
meta.
meta.
There's a meta.
I will shank you. It's pretty much what they're doing. They're not releasing a ton of new maps. They're releasing new characters and new character combinations and tweaking. It plays like Horde mode in other FPSs, right?
Not as enemies, 4 people on the team.
A reason I'm asking a lot about these, I guess, some of these like ways that they iterate and just add new content is because, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that's how they make their money? New content.
Actually, ironically, no.
Yeah.
So like
Really?
champions is not how they make their money. Skins are.
Superfluous things that don't actually matter.
But you don't get
how
hats.
they make their money.
Hats.
You don't get you don't get a new skin until you have a new character put that skin on.
So the reason.
But there are more
Characters you
skins
get through
for
playing.
characters.
But you can buy champions just by playing the game for a long time. Like there are 2 currencies in LoL. There's Riot points, which you buy with real world money, and there's influence points, which you gain steadily over time as you play matches, right? Most people who've played this game forever have bought every possible champion or thing they could ever want with IP. So when a new champion comes out, they're like, boom, bought it for free with IP, right? Skins you can only buy like cosmetic stuff that doesn't make a difference to gameplay. You can only buy with Riot points.
All right, how about this? I'll say everything, and then tell me everything that's wrong. So I was trying to say that like coming out like continually new content is probably how I thought they made their money. Versus, so how well is League of Legends doing versus like StarCraft? StarCraft was a game that just came out. You had to buy it for like $60, and it's an esport, and doesn't have all these like little tweaks. It's this e-chess. Versus League of Legends, like continually comes out with new content, is trying to like roll and make more money by continually coming out with stuff.
So it seems like the question is, sorry, I thought you were finished.
Not yet. So, if StarCraft wants to make more money, what's their option? Is it new? It's whole part of the sport mode. Whole new 60-minute game. Is it? Could they fix their problem by saying like, you know what? We're gonna make some Zerg hats and like now doing more free-to-play stuff.
Are you trying to tell me that StarCraft 2 players would not buy Zerg hats?
Wait.
Maybe they would, but the way I'm trying to come at this is that during my internship, like people and even like the internet right now is crazy about the idea of how can we make stuff free to play and capitalize on that. And League of Legends is the one thing is one of the many ones that like gets a lot of talk. Like, boom, League of Legends, World of Tanks.
People talk about World of Tanks. Sorry,
I know.
Like in the sense that like they're making money with a strategy of doing a free to play thing. Yeah, sure. So if you had to make StarCraft today, and instead we're saying like $60 thing, let's see how we can make StarCraft with a free to play way. I'm hearing hats for Zerg. Or like, you know what I mean?
So the question that you're trying to get at is...
Yeah.
No. So the question that you're trying to get at... Like,
maps or
I saw this
items or
amazing talk in 2010 about the like gamification of just like everyday things, right? And it basically hit on why Farmville was huge. It's because the free-to-play model is a brilliant business model. It is freaking brilliant. Like, you cannot get past that. Like, people like to play games. You make it so there's no barrier to entry to play this game, right? Like all you have to do is install it.
No financial barrier.
Financial barrier, yes, that is exactly.
Which is really the important barrier there.
Which is a very important barrier for a lot of people.
That's the important one,
right?
Yes, I
agree. It is an important player for younger, like people who have to like ask their parents for money, right? Like people who are
or if you're time starved, like
poetry,
time for this,
like right, exactly. Like
college students who are living.
It's really tempting.
Exactly.
Free things are tempting for everyone. It's just what it is. So, after people play the game for a little while, then all of a sudden you're like, I've spent lots of time on this. I enjoy this game. That's why, I mean, to be honest, this is why I love Riot as a company, is because their goal, the way they make money, is by making a good game. If people didn't like the game that they were playing, didn't think it was worth their time and their money, they wouldn't be making money, right? The reason why they're like, I think probably the most gross, like they're making the most money of like any video game company.
They are.
They're stacked.
To directly answer you, like,
they're stacked because
Blizzard is having its lunch eaten by by League of Legends at the moment. StarCraft 2 considers itself to be the premier esport in the world, but in actuality, in terms of like viewer numbers and in terms of active players, League of Legends blows them out of the water massively, right?
StarCraft 2 pros are now leaving StarCraft to play League of Legends.
And a big part of the reason for that is because, well, at least like one interpretation of like what is going on there is, first of all, free is free, but another, so like there's no barrier to entry for people to get into League of Legends. But then,
no financial
there's
barrier.
There's no barrier. I can play it right now. But the other thing is that Riot's business model is tied to the longevity of the game for people. So, if you are continually engaged in League of Legends, then chances are you'll want to buy some of the more content which they release. Whereas once Blizzard sells you a copy of StarCraft 2, they don't really have any investment in having you continue to play. Like, no financial investment. Maybe it's important for their brand. Maybe they like the fact that it's building this customer relationship between you and them. But there's no financial incentive, right? So maybe one way of looking at it is that, yeah, StarCraft 2 needs some kind of thing which can be released iteratively over a shorter time frame, which they're willing to charge people money for, to give them a business incentive to keep creating content and keep people interested in StarCraft 2.
Why do you think
That's
they
what
gave,
you
why
meant-
do you think
that-
they
that
gave
might be
away
it.
Diablo 3? I mean, they literally gave away Diablo 3 to anybody who was like, I'll stay subscribed to WoW for a year.
You just own it already. Like, I'm gonna keep playing. You got Diablo 3.
And I want to point out that two things, actually. One, WoW currently exists halfway between StarCraft 2 and League of Legends, right?
Right.
Their model right now is we're hemorrhaging players like crazy because this game is fucking boring. And I just paid a whole ton of money for that new expansion, and I'm already bored. So what they do is it's free to play to a certain level, and what they're banking on is that you will find enough interest in the game that you will subscribe. And what they do is make everything humanly possible that you can pay a small amount of money to get extra stuff that's not power, is just shit to keep you interested, right? Do you want to ride on a giant glowing pony? Give us $15 and here's your damn pony. And I bought at least like 3 glowing ponies.
Why did
So I
you
guess
do
that's
that?
That's what's semi-interesting to me is, right, the suits care so much about how, where free-to-play gets that money from. Like, and I like the analogy you gave with, like, you know, adding a champion is like a linear thing versus adding a map is like an exponential, like, level of complexity. And those kind of numbers of where are they going to get their bang for buck for trying, or for what element they're going to try and make the pay in the free-to-play model. And now I'm hearing it's like, it's really just skins. So just like add the...
Yeah, you got a new champion, you get new
Here's-
skins. and you got a
Here's
new
something
map
I
to go.
learned about Riot at GDC this year, because they had 2 different talks, and I haunted their booth like a fucking banshee. So there's that. So I got to talk to Morello. That was fun. But he's a nice guy. He's kind of bear, a little cute, actually. But sorry if you're watching the stream, Mr. Morello. All right, so
Is it still going?
Yes, it is. It's still going.
Sorry,
I can't even
Internet.
see the people. It's just me. Thing. I don't even
Actually,
know.
it's Ben that wants to make out with you. I'm just kidding.
You were just Ben's voice.
Sorry, I should actually make my
Focus,
point
come on.
sometime. Their company motto is, we want to be the most player-focused company in the world. And I think what companies who are... Look, video game companies are businesses. They're there to make money, right? That's their job. And I think hating them for doing it is kind of a dick move. Because that's what they're there for, right? The other issue is, though, that I think what other companies looking at LoL's success from the outside have not taken into account is the extensive effort Riot has made as a company to connect with their player base. Because what's keeping them spending money, and you don't even want to know how much money I've given those bastards in the past year and a half, right? The thing that's keeping people giving them money is the perception that their game is interesting, but also that Riot is interested in them. And which is something I actually
Also, I
feel
need to go.
like...
Sorry.
You do have to go?
Yep.
Thank you, Ben. I will finish the spot, however. I think that's something Zynga doesn't do. You don't get the impression that Zynga gives a damn about their 8 bajillion users, right? You get the impression, looking at Zynga games and Zynga public communication, that what Zynga mostly wants to do is take people's money. And I feel like that was kind of like this sub-vocal thread that's been running through a lot of your questions. I may be reading you wrong, but it kind of sounded
So
like...
the follow-up to that is, if you go, it takes 2 clicks to get to the lore of League of Legends, which didn't even have to exist. Like, you didn't have to say why Darius has a ex-maid who has telekinesis from the operation, or whatever. I don't know.
I can't wait to play the ex-telekinetic maid.
Whatever.
So, like, we're
versus
just lost
World of
in
Tanks,
technical-
like, I don't think, like, I could not find their lore. Just trying to, like...
How do you have lore for World of Tanks? There's a world and there's tanks.
Tanks,
That's
that's
it.
what's the whole world.
Sorry,
you could
I've
argue that
seen
about
World,
me,
I've
too.
seen
Like,
World of
there's-
Tanks at 1 GDC and 2 PAXs now, and every time I pass their booth, I'm just filled with despair.
There's a lot of background information on each of the different tank types.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Oh
Somebody
no,
wrote
I'm
it.
sure like that jerkwad who sits there
And what's
watching,
the percent
watching
gain they're
like
getting
the
out of,
History
like,
Channel
having
going,
this,
it was really awesome that
like,
the way that they had
story
the
for the-